people that are about to come up. We're switching topics a little bit. We're going to emotional contagion. Woo.
I know, last session of the day, we got to really, really grab the attention, keep people engaged.
Yeah, this will be great. Well, turning it over to Erica. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Nate. Well, I would love for Sandra to join me. I will kind of set the stage here. And I'm really excited about this session. It's been a long time coming. And I'm really excited because last year, if you attended our summit, we talked about empathy. And it was really the beginning of a conversation last March that then snowballed into probably having that same conversation and presenting it at panels at 4 to 5 different conferences, engagements throughout the year. And so we know it's a hot topic. We know there's so much to learn from it. And so when I met Michael and Sandra at ICMI, I immediately thought, okay, 2026, we're going to level up this conversation. I wasn't sure how we were going to do it yet, but I just knew they were going to be the two to help us level this conversation up. And so just through kind of iterations of interest and conversations around how can we do that, we have come to this really unique positioning around workforce challenges between the generations. And so that perception to emotional contagion is something that they presented. And that emotional contagion is such a scientific yet emotional word. I'm really, really excited for that to be the lens of today's conversation. So how we perceive and respond to the friction points really can depend on those generational perspectives within our teams. Specifically today, talking about CX teams, that could be internal, that could be outward facing between agents and customers. So there's a lot of layers here. We do have a full hour, so I'm very, very excited. Sandra and Michael, I'll let you both say hi, and then I'm going to do some introductions and then hand it over to you.
Thank you. Well, hi from the UK. It's about 7 p.m. tonight, and it's never too late for a talk about emotional contagion, empathy, and emotional intelligence, and the generational friction.
Yes, and hi from Connecticut. Not as crazy as the UK, but glad to be here.
So I'm going to take a punt at sharing my screen. Have you got the slides ready there, Michael?
Let me grab those.
So guys, we have a bit of an interactive session here for you. We are looking forward to your contributions, your questions. We've got a couple of polls that we're going to include here too. The Masters of Technology here, Michael's going to sort out the slides. I've actually been on transit coming here. I've just about managed to get into a hotel quickly. The incredible customer experience at Canary Wharf in East London. So please be ready with your questions. We hope that this is a fruity, I think, provocative discussion. We want to make sure that you are able to take away some of the tools that we have. We've created a few things that you will be able to take away. Also, you will be able to use them later today, if not tomorrow. We have been using some of these with clients, with some coaching opportunities, and so we know that they're successful. So we hope that you will take full advantage of the things that we're going to share, and hopefully Michael will be with us in just a second. For some reason, I cannot get the slides to come onto the screen. There it is, emotional intelligence and trying to keep calm while the tech carries on. How are we doing?
One moment, sorry.
I wonder if I can share my window. It's not letting me do that either. Goodness me. So let's ask a question to start off with. Let's ask the question about generational difference. How many of you out there have different generations within your organization? When I say different generations, I'm talking about people who might be millennial, who might be Generation X, maybe Z. How many of you out there are blending these generations in your organization? And what kind of experiences are you having with those different generations? and I can keep talking, no problem at all, if you're having the accent. I can certainly keep talking. You have a
I got the
four-generational blend.
slides.
Okay. Zoomers, millennials, and a couple of Xers. Thank you. Any more out there that has a generational blend? Well, if you don't have a generational blend that you're noticing, it's certainly on its way. I certainly have found that with the cousins, the nephews and nieces, some of my godchildren are finding it a very interesting place as they negotiate and they navigate different communication styles with the people who are already in the organizations that they've joined. So, Michael, are we ready to go?
Yeah, can you guys see the screen?
I can't see the slide yet. Here we are. Fantastic. So thank you for bearing with us while we got to the slides. So we're going to be talking about from perception to emotional contagion. Emotional contagion is really around the human species experiencing emotion and then passing it on. If you can imagine catching a cold, really that's what's going on with our emotions, both positive and less positive. And really, we're talking about people being able to either receive those really good vibes or to be resistant and resilient from them. So let's start with our little agenda, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
We can move along one. So, we're going to talk about a bit of science, describing to you the brain. We've got a couple of little tests for you to do. We're then going to talk far more about what goes on in the brain when we have the experience of experiences. Bit of a deeper dive, as Erica described, around empathy. And this, if you're going to take one thing from this presentation, think about expectations management. That's going to be our biggest gift to you. A couple of things around feedback, and then an invitation again for you to take the time to refresh, and then plenty of time for questions and answers. So, Michael, over to you.
Yep. All right. Thank you. So yes, your brain. So want to start right there, not out in this broad world, not with your colleagues, not with the generation that drives you absolutely crazy in Teams meetings. I want to start inside because everything we're going to talk about today originates here. And I want to make you a promise right now. In the next few minutes, people in this session are going to fundamentally disagree with each other. I promise you that. I promise. About something that they're all looking at simultaneously. And every single one of them, one of you guys, are going to be right. Let me show you what I mean. So take a few seconds. And in the chat, tell me what you see in this picture. I'll give you a few seconds to plug something in there. Okay, how does an island? Yep. Lava lamp. What's it make you feel? What's it make you feel? Ah, isolation. Excited, joy. Interesting. So you can kind of see all of the different perceptions of this same image. Same pixels on the screen, and we have, people talking about paradise, warmth, and comfort, and some people saying hot, vacation, or isolation. So there's a lot of diversity in how people perceive things. And that's not a coincidence. And none of you guys are wrong. So, and it's fueled by your history, your values, your mood today, all of these different things. That all goes into your perception. Now, let's try another one. Now, what do you see in this image? Two people, okay. Butterflies, yep. Now we got somebody talking about a goblet. So you can already see, you kind of see different things, right? And sometimes, you'll see two faces. Other times you'll see a vase or a goblet. Let's try one more. I'm sure some of you have seen this one before. Old lady, yeah. What else? A girl. Young lady with a hat on. Okay. Okay. And I'm sure some of you are looking at the chat and you're like, what? How are you seeing that? How can you possibly see a young lady, or how can you possibly see an old lady? And the thing is, neither of you are wrong, and it is both. And it depends on how you're looking at it. And so I'm going to kind of give you, for those who can't see the old lady out of it, I'm going to give you a couple hints. Take a look at the young girl's ear. Could that also be an eye? And what about her necklace? Could that also be a mouth? Are some of you who saw a young girl at first starting to see how it could also be an older lady? Anyone's perspectives changed? Can you now see something and now you can't unsee it? Right? Isn't that so strange? And I bet when we started, you would have been hard pressed to agree with somebody that said it was an old lady, or vice versa. And that's the beauty about this, is that once you do start to see those things and you start to see it from a different perspective, you can't unsee it. And your brain's not a camera, right? It's predicting. It's a prediction machine. It fills things in based off of your background, based off of all of that other context. And now, yeah, you go back and forth between the two. Yeah, crazy. Okay, one more. And this one, some of you are going to be like, oh my gosh, not this again. What about this one? Let's get some really heated debate in the chat. Yeah, is it white and gold or black and blue? Okay, we're gonna get some people that are like, there's no other options. I'm already seeing some strong perspectives on this. I love this. And some of this, you can kind of see, again, it's all about kind of how you're looking at things. And Jen, of course, yes, it's purple. Yeah, don't go with the pre-described, descriptions here. Erica, yep. All right, so we've done this, a few times now in the chat, split every single time, because we're not all wired the same. We don't see the same things first. We don't interpret the same signals the same way. Now, take that off the screen and put it somewhere real. So the one word reply in the message that felt dismissive, the team member who, like, we're talking about your workplace now, right? We're talking about your personal relationships. Now, we all recognized that we see things differently. And maybe some of that also applies to how we interpret our real life, like, not this exercise of blue and gold or whatever, purple, right? And so we start to look at things a little bit differently, right? Those who, maybe the team members who always seem disengaged on calls, maybe there's something else going on. Or the colleague who pushes back on everything, right? We don't really know what's going on there. And what if the problem isn't their intention, but it's the gap between your prediction of them and actual reality? All right, let's put this back on the screen. Thank you. So now I'm going to hand it back to Sandra, and she's going to go through our experiences.
Thank you. So I just want to check whether we've had the poll up and everyone has seen the poll. The question being, how often do you ask people what they're experiencing? Because very often we make an assumption that what we view is the right thing, the only thing in town, when in actual fact there are so many other options. There are so many other different perspectives. And this really is where we start to think about generational difference and the empathy that we might have for others and the curiosity we might have to understand how each individual, despite what their age is, what their background is, any of those types of things, has a contribution to make. So if we think about how we experience experiences, we go to the next slide, please, Michael. You can think about experiences really being as unique as your fingerprint. So if you think about that for a second and we think, well, yeah, we had a great time and yeah, you really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that concert. It was really great fun, etc., etc. The language we use might be similar, but the things we might feel that cause us to use that language might be completely different. And it's only really through asking really good questions can we really get under the skin of why someone feels that way and what drives them to think and feel that way. The next slide is going to talk to you briefly about 3 key things that comes up from a neuroscientist over on your side of the pond called Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's a neuroscientist who has been working exclusively on how emotions are made. And she makes the point that, in fact, every single person has a very different socialization. The way that we were brought up, the people who are influencing us, our teachers, our parents, our aunties, uncles, best friends, all have a contribution to play in shaping our view of the world. The experiences we have, and most importantly, the meaning we attach to the experiences we have, are also major critical. And again, the types of labeling that our friends, families, aunties, uncles put onto things will influence whether we are favorable towards something, whether we are excited by something. They have a huge influence in our kind of young years. And the final thing is context. And I think that this is probably the most exciting thing when I think about generational differences, when I think about emotional intelligence and empathy. It's really needing to understand all of the environmental factors around someone so that we can have a true appreciation for how they think and how they behave. We want to move to the next slide now, and I'm going to show you a little picture. Those of you who have an opinion on this shot and what you think this person might be feeling, please add a couple of words to the chat. What emotion do you think this individual is feeling right now based on the facial expression that you can see? Do you think it's pain? Do you think it's joy? Definitely is intense. That is definitely a 10 out of 10. Anyone gonna have a bit of a guess? Because the actual purpose of this exercise is putting your emphasis, your focus on this very narrow frame and then opening it up. So Michael, if you can open that particular image up. Accomplishment. Jen, you get 10 points. That's incredible. Thank you. So very often when I speak to clients, I talk about how, what is that? And they're like, oh gosh, I don't know. Is she angry? Is she absolutely lost her temper? And this is someone actually winning a tennis match. I think it's Serena Williams actually. So this is the point about context being everything and assumptions being very dangerous. And the thing is, we will stay in the space of assumption unless we are open with our heart, we invite questions, we receive, and we use active listening to hear what's really being said. Over to you, Michael.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about empathy, a little bit more about empathy. And so this is clearly not a soft skill. And I think that framing of it has done it a disservice for many years. It's a very rational response to scientific reality that the person that you're working with is operating from an entirely different set of experiences, socialization, and context than you are. And when you understand somebody else's reality, your response to them will change. Not because you're being kind, which obviously that's the bonus, that should be the default, But because you're being more curious, right? You're trying to gather more information. You're trying not to jump into, those assumptions and let that kind of shape, who that person is or contextualize their actions for them, right? You're trying to lead with that curiosity and really try to better understand them. And if in doubt, ask, right? You have to open that up, like literally ask somebody to try to learn more about them and try to understand what's going on. And I think so often we kind of forget that we can literally open our mouths and ask questions about things, about people, and that's not a weird thing to do. Yeah, they might be surprised because it doesn't happen a lot, but it's not a weird thing to do. So we're trying to better understand what's actually going on. And now I think we have a poll before we kind of talk about more of the generational slicing of it. And go ahead and fill out that poll, complete that poll. But what is your view of work?
So this question will make complete sense in a moment when we reveal something to you, but we're really keen for you to tell us, is your view of work duty and survival? Is it career and identity? Is it a means to support life and values? We'd love to know what your view of work is all about.
And Erica, I love that. Tell me more, or explain that to me. I can better understand. I love that. Okay. How are we doing on that?
It's looking like career and identity to me. It's a unanimous 3 votes on the same place. So let's reveal.
All right. All right. Are we still sharing the actual screen? Let's share the deck. All right. Grand reveal. And here's why it's so complicated. Now, in the poll, we had a unanimous response. However, we're going to put people into boxes or generations into boxes for a second, which, by the way, shouldn't do because it's not going to be prescriptive. It's not going to be the most accurate way of categorizing. But there are some interesting dynamics that may ring true to you. Or maybe you're like, hey, I actually have pieces of this, from different categories. And so, but the whole point is this is to serve as kind of a heuristic, right? A shortcut to say, like, how do people maybe generally within these categories view of work, right? We took just one of those questions out of this and gave it to you in a poll, and a lot of people in, kind of seeing it as, career identity. So you can kind of see where those line up, but, it kind of carries through many aspects of your life. And, while some generations might have experienced war directly or depression and scarcity, and others have seen more economic growth, right? And some, there's just a ton of instability. I'm sure we know nothing about instability right now, right? And so there's a lot of different experiences people are going through, and it changes so quickly. And so there's so many different contexts, right? Like so many different experiences that we're all going through. And certain generations, you go through certain experiences, and that shapes how you view job security. Maybe if you've only ever experienced a lot of volatility within the job market, maybe then you have a different perspective where maybe you don't see that there's loyalty from the organizations that you are employed from, right? So you see it differently, right? And maybe that's kind of you protecting yourself in some way. And so you don't show that loyalty, and maybe you're always kind of looking for another job or looking, job hopping, or maybe you're part of a generation that really kind of like sees your work as part of your purpose, and that kind of carries you through making different, decisions based on how you see your employment or just your job, like your role in general. And it really resonates on a personal level. And that's going to shape how you see things. And then, maybe, your perceptions of authority change based on, all sorts of different things going on, right? So you can kind of see, right? We put this into a graph, right? Or a chart. But you're probably not, maybe you're going to resonate with everything in one column, but maybe you're going to resonate with certain pieces of each column, and that's okay. And I think that the main lesson out of this is, again, reinforcing the fact that everybody's unique experiences, either on a personal level or a broader social level, have defined them in some ways. People have trauma. People have had different kind of tumultuous situations, right? A lot of change, and have adapted to that, and so they see the world differently, and they have different ways of protecting themselves. And so you can probably imagine how this starts to translate into how people interact within their jobs. And so, we're today kind of talking about like the emotional contagion, and how people kind of influence each other right through their emotions, how people pick up on that. And we're also talking about the generational slicing of how people see, how people see the world, and how people see their professions and things like that. And so you can probably start to see the differences here. I want to also, kind of reinforce the fact that everything has always changed, and things are today changing at a pace that nobody could have ever imagined. Many different variables, right? We talk about AI, right? And how disruptive that can be, to certain industries, to certain jobs, right? And we talk about how it could also be a positive disruption, right? To some jobs, making you more effective and efficient, right? And so there's all of these different things, but what we do know is that change is constant, and it impacts the way that you see the world. And so when we talk about, the different generations, and maybe what experiences they've gone through, this is not, something that is malicious, right? These are just different experiences people have. There's different perspectives. If we draw back to those exercises of looking at different pictures and everybody's interpretations, right? It's all different. And that's the same thing. And I think that that's where, we have to really get into, deploy that empathy, lead with that curiosity, and ensure that we're never making those assumptions, and we're never defining people by maybe even some of their actions. And we have to lean into that curiosity and give them some patience too. So now this is an exercise that it's called the values exchange. And the point of it being that you kind of map out, and Sandra, if you want to jump in and explain this more, if I don't do a good job, but you map out what is a value that that's a core value, right? Something that really matters to you. So I may choose like connection as like that being a core value of mine. And then you want to bring that to life through different examples. And Sandra, can you expand on this a little bit for me?
Yeah, sure. Of course. So ultimately, our values drive our behavior, how we see the world, and we don't always talk about them very plainly. We don't always give the person we're working with the opportunity to explore what really drives them, where the boundaries are. So if you think about language and you think about a list of words, anything from learning through to humor, anything you like. The idea with this particular exercise is that it's a compass. The compass is an intentional use of symbolism, really, as the direction that we find ourselves going when we have particular values. So you pick a bunch of words and you place them in the center around the circle of the compass itself. But the thing that brings it to life is to say, well, actually, when do you see that value show up? So for me, humor is a big thing. So I'd be putting the word humor into the little gap in the circle, and then I'd be looking and following the wiggly line to the bigger box, and I would be saying, if anyone is laughing and larking around, I'm likely to be drawn to that, or I might be the cause of it, because laughter is so important to me. Having fun and actually being quite trying to be funny or enjoying a laugh. And so when you fill this particular tool yourself, another person fills in with their words, you then have this exchange where you discuss with open heart, open mind, with curiosity, and you get to understand one another a bit better. And when you go into those words and those descriptions, you suddenly start to understand what other types of behavior might be complementary or not to the value set of the other person. So that's important to take some time, really think about what your values are, create a safe space, so somewhere you wouldn't be interrupted, just you and a couple of others, or maybe just the two of you, just to have that confidential conversation about what's really important. Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, I could really see how that would really expand that connection that you have with others. And I can see that if you do that, obviously creating that psychological safety and having that, between one another, that's going to open up a lot of really meaningful dialogue. And I think that's one of the purposes of this is to foster that communication. All right, let's talk about the Yeti. So this is also, a reflective moment. And it, helps you expand thinking is, what it's all about. And it's to help catch yourself in moments of assumptions and choosing curiosity instead. And so we see that we have, what you don't know yet, what I haven't done yet, who haven't I asked yet? And so like what I don't know yet, about this person, their situation, what's actually going on for them right now, right? And what I haven't done yet and how I engage with them, what haven't I tried to create safety within that relationship, or to, like what haven't I offered as far as like, led with that curiosity, or put some information out there to like open that door, or, whose perspective am I missing that might completely change how I'm reading this, right? And so this is a way of helping, someone in your team or organization find some of that friction and help just foster that reflection. And that's what the I comes in, is like that reflection amongst, for yourself, and help just facilitate that. Say like, hey, I need to reflect on the situation. I need to dig in a little bit more, and this fosters that communication. Sandra, do you have anything you want to add about this exercise?
Yeah, just to say, we've created this little Yeti. In fact, I think he's quite big. He's about 8 foot, but don't tell anyone. And it's really about something friendly, something not accusatory, something a bit cuddly and a bit different. To Michael's point, it is absolutely yet I. So you own it. But then there's the opportunity to have that friendly conversation about, where's your Yeti, or where's the Yeti in the room? It's that kind of thing, depending of course on your culture, depending on how playful people can become. It can be a thing that can nudge people to remind them that in fact nothing is concrete and final. Anything could be different, new, exciting, and it might not have happened yet, but it could be happening in the future. So yeah, this is another opportunity really to have a different type of conversation where people might be a little bit stuck, or they might not perceive that things are possible. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Sandra. All right, so I want to throw a couple different perspectives out there. Again, maybe we shouldn't be boxing people into different, growth mindset, fixed mindset. I'm sure you guys have heard of some of these mindsets, but I kind of want to expand a little bit on, what this really, really means. What's it mean to show up with a growth mindset? What's it mean to have a fixed mindset? And so growth mindset, and if you're anything like me, you've heard about this, but maybe don't know how that shows up. And I don't want to put this out as a label, as a verdict, but more as like you're showing up with questions, right? You're showing up with that curiosity. Now, a fixed mindset, maybe you're a little bit more, you know, leaning on those assumptions. Maybe you're not so ready to grow, and maybe there's some reflection that you need to do first. And maybe, you label people and say, they'll never change. I've tried. You have all of these kind of this a little bit of baggage, right? Maybe you've had really bad experiences with certain people, and you haven't seen them put the effort that you kind of wanted to see. And so maybe, you're going to be leaning on that when you're interacting with them. But the growth mindset is about shaking that off and saying, I am going to lead with questions. I'm going to not assign people with, my conclusions about what their experiences are. I'm not going to make the assumptions that they've had the same experience through life that I have, or that I've had, some other, something that kind of makes me a lead or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of that perception that you approach the situations with, and you have to, you really have to be careful not to stay in a fixed mindset. It's really comfortable, to be honest. Like it makes the world, from your eyes, probably a little bit easier, more palatable. But it's really, really dangerous for relationships. And so growth mindset really helps you to broaden your world and build really true, honest relationships with people, and invest in those, and and not take everything at face value. And so that critical thinking, and that curiosity is so important. Sandra, have anything you want to add about that?
Only really that we know that the human species has the system 1 and system 2 type thinking. We know this from the work of Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. So there's no judgment here. It's very much around, we are wired on autopilot because our brains use quite a lot of energy when we really have to think. And really, the brain's got a lot of other stuff it wants to do rather than have to completely change perspectives at a drop of a hat. So it's comfortable for us to be in a particular set of thinking. And it does require a leap of faith and more energy, more glucose to do that system 2, deeper, more critical thinking. But it is necessary, particularly when we think about the generational differences, generational friction. And it absolutely has to happen from all sides. This isn't a case of one generation waiting and asking another. It has to be a collective experience. I kind of want to move on now to experience management, because I think that the exercises we've given you so far are good. They will be very helpful. But honestly, Michael and I believe that if you do this next activity, you could even prevent a lot of the discomfort, a lot of the difficulty that you might be experiencing with your generational differences. So let's go to psychological contract. And I'm going to tell you a story here. I put a load of words onto the slide, but if you can imagine that this is a conversation between two people where they set out their expectations of each other. So you have your job description, you have your job specification, but no one has told you, to get the best out of me, do these types of things, and I'll be mindful of the kind of things that you want me to do for you, and then we'll start with a head start. We all know that in the work environment, we learn what people like, what they need, what their preferences are, usually when we're getting feedback which says, please don't do it that way, or do more of this. Now imagine if you had a conversation when you first had an interview, or you first are onboarded, or you start a new project, and the psychological contract is, this is what I would like you to do to help me be brilliant. And can you tell me what you need me to do to make you brilliant? So being proactive and having that conversation up front means that you have a really good idea of where the boundaries are, where the preferences are, and you're going to intentionally and purposefully do more of the good stuff, and you'll make sure that you do less of the bad stuff, or less of the less positive things that people have highlighted. When I worked in the airlines years ago, my boss's boss invited me to a meeting. I was quite early, I was second week into my job. And she said, I'd like to have a conversation with you about my expectations and your expectations of me. I was quite young in career and I really didn't know what to do. She said, when I hear from this particular team, I'm going to be sending you the bullet points because I'm going to want you to know what's going on with them because they're a really dynamic group. And if you get a request from that team over there, I need you to tell me almost immediately. Even if there's nothing for me to do, I just need to know. If you can't hit a deadline, that's okay. Just keep me informed and don't leave it to the last minute. I'm very accepting of the fact that sometimes the things that I give take longer, but if you can just tell me how long it might take, I'm going to be totally fine. I don't like surprises. So can you see that there are things that aren't written or described in our job descriptions or person specifications, but this is absolutely setting out the expectations of one another in an informal psychological contract. The person with the seniority goes second because otherwise it means that the person who is higher in the organization is kind of putting on the other person. And you have this exchange because otherwise it is guesswork and it can be conflict because communication is a bit of a merry dance on occasion. So please do we invite you to have this conversation with your peers, with your colleagues, as early as you can. And even if you have got a team where you've got a number of people you've worked with for quite a long time, start practicing this. It's about 45 minutes long. You talk about how you're going to be exchanging some of your expectations and be open to be listening. And then you paraphrase back what has been told to you so that they feel that they've been listened and you can check that the meaning that you've taken from what has been said is the meaning that was intended. So that's the psychological contract. We've got another one for you. I hope you like this too, because we love it. So communications charter. Communications charter is actually, again, a proactive way of people describing how they would like to use each of the channels that's out there. Now, quite honestly, all of the channels that are out there, there's far more than we've got on this list. But if you are proactive and inviting people to stress, this is what I'd like for work, this is what I'd like for my response time, these are for social purposes and anything else. Now, this doesn't mean to say that I can say to Michael, I only want email and I'm only answering it between 1 and 2 UK time. That's not what this is about. I might just say, actually, I just want the phone and you've got a half an hour window tomorrow. I wouldn't do that either. But this is a discussion, as adults all together, working out how we can optimize our time, but having the conversation. Otherwise, it's guesswork. And then particularly when you're in a remote or in a hybrid environment, if you don't hear back from someone, or if you're using a channel that they associate with social and not with work, you can just take the confusion out of it. Really, really helpful. We know it works. Let's move on to feedback now, because I want to make sure we've left enough time for questions. Feedback. Now, some of you may have heard of this. I hope that you have, because we think it's got magic sauce. Let's go for the next slide. This is SBI. So this is situation, behavior, and impact. Now, the reason why we put this into the deck is because we understand that there is perhaps some confusion, misinterpretation. There's some perceptions around how feedback is given and received. Now, SBI is an interesting model because it kind of takes the situation out and you have it in front of you to play with. And the person who's giving the feedback absolutely owns it. So I'm going to give an example. Michael, earlier on this call, we took a bit of time to get the slides up. I noticed that you were busy beavering around to get the slides up. The impact was that I was feeling a little bit nervous. I was having a bit of an amygdala hijack, but that was actually my fault. But can you understand that the situation has been identified? Michael knows exactly what I'm talking about. The behavior is clear, you were beavering about, and the impact was that I felt a bit worried about it. In the same way, I could say, Michael, at the beginning of this call, you jumped to it when I said, could you please sort out the slides because I'm having technical issues? And the impact is I know we're a team and we get on so well and we just know the vibe and it's brilliant. When you dissect by situation, Michael's brain can go to that particular place. I'm describing my perception of the behavior and the impact. And it's very likely that if it's a less positive thing, it was never, ever Michael's intention to come across that way. And so when we have this dissection between SBI, we're offering it up and owning it, which means that the other person has the opportunity to say, oh my gosh, I never knew that you felt that way. And I never knew that that would have an impact on you. I'm really sorry. Or, oh, okay, yeah, won't do that again. It's a very smart way of ensuring that people understand exactly what happened when. When feedback is vague or when feedback is accusatory, not observational, that's when you might have a problem.
Yeah, that accusational aspect is really important here because you have to separate the actual behavior and the situation from identity, right? Or attribute it into somebody's, personal traits. Very the same, maybe some of the same feedback could have looked differently if you said, Michael, you were very unprepared. Like, are you, you're a lazy person. That's of course not how you provide feedback, but you have to, like, by separating out the like the situation and behavior, it does prevent you from going to that reactionary state, right? And start to get, kind of pulled into that part. So I
Sure.
think it's a very effective framework.
Thank you. Last slide for me. So the really key thing we'd like to leave you with is please consider when we think about perception and we think about experience, all of us are as a result of our environment and the changes of our environment. I mean that in the broadest sense. We talked about how during our growing up, the first 7 years of our lives, we're hugely influenced by the people and the environment, the culture, everything that's around us. And that does mean that we all have very different perceptions because we all have very different thumbprint experiences and emotions to match. So being aware of the kinds of things that we have each experienced and having a discussion about some of those backstories could be an interesting place to start. The next point is practice your befriending your Yeti. Please do. Yeti. You haven't done it yet. You haven't had that conversation yet. And then task yourself to complete that curious question or trying something new or being inquisitive, not too weird, but just being careful and showing an interest on that active listening word again. You can be consciously aware of your fixed or growth mindset. And the invitation is to think about a term. And this term is just like me. Because when you boil down everything around all of us, we all really want the same thing. We want some peace. We want to live well. We want love and harmony. That's what we want deep down. And so there will always be a common denominator across all. And the final thing is, with the small exercises that we've shared here with you, which of course please do use in your teams, you might start an empathy series where once every month or every time you have a team meeting, you might just offer these up and have a little play. You might call them experiments just to see, just take the heat off and take the kind of mandatory obligation for people to use them. So that's it really. Recognition, open mind, some absolute gems, we think, of exercises that you could be using with your teams. Michael.
Yeah, thank you. So, what we've established today is that perception shapes everything. That people in the same session, looking at the same image, experience something entirely different. And that every experience is real, right? We've established that those perceptions are built by socialization, experience, and context. And these are forces that shape how each of us, long before we end up working alongside each other, how we interact. And we've established that the friction we call generational is almost never about laziness or entitlement or rigidity. It's instead about what, all of your human experiences and how we perceive the world. And without enough context and without enough curiosity, without enough of the conversations that Sandra has just equipped you to have, we don't have that growth mindset. And we have established that empathy is not a soft skill, right? This is something that's core to human relationships. And that is how we can all move together, fully, and have that dialogue and build these relationships stronger. And so if there's, one thing that I really want to leave you guys with, and it connects really everything that we have today, and it's called that emotional contagion, right? It's recognizing that how we perceive the world and how we perceive others, and the fact that how we show up from an emotional angle, that affects others, and people pick up on that. And so, take time to really kind of just reflect on that. How am I showing up today? What lens am I looking through things with? Right? And am I showing up with curiosity or growth mindset, or am I showing up with these assumptions? And sometimes it's going to be really, really tough to understand that you are looking at things through a fixed perspective. Really, it could be one of the hardest things that you do at first. And it takes practice. It takes practice because it's really comfortable to utilize those heuristics that your brain has picked up through your entire life experience. And so that's what we're asking you to do, is take that time to reflect, take your time to ask questions, and just lead with curiosity. Thank you.
Well, I am so appreciative of you both. You are both brilliant with your scientific grounding, but applicable lessons and teaching. And I just love, because we've had a wide variety of different topics today. A lot of people will see this content afterwards in different ways as well. And it applies no matter who you are and who you're talking to, right? It can be done in CX teams with trainings about how to try to connect with customers. And sometimes those are very, very, very short interactions. So the challenge becomes, how do you establish that rapport in those very short interactions? Sometimes it's developmental within cross teams who are trying to build strategy, and those can be a little bit longer, and those are a little bit more have deeper connection. But I just love that you guys always have that ability to bring the little nuggets. We've talked about nuggets today. We've talked about pizza. We've got your beavers and your Yeti. So I've stolen Nate's show for the wrap up here. But just thank you both. And Sandra, I know you were on the go, so just carving out time for us today really means a lot. So I appreciate you both.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nate and Jen, if you guys want to come back on, it's always strange how much you plan for these things and then boom, we're done.
I know. It's been a day full of so much learning, so many nuggets, like you said. Now we have beavers to throw into the mix. I think it's just a well-rounded day of, thought leadership and different sessions where people really get something out of it. I had somebody tell us that they were so excited for this summit because they're not able to attend conferences this year just because of budget restrictions. And this allows them to connect with other CX leaders in this space to be able to have some of that thought leadership on their own and communicate with other CX professionals.
Love it. All right. Is this the moment, Jen?
This is the moment that we have arrived. We have finally made it to the end.
What a day. Well, I've been taking some notes throughout the day and want to try to put a bit of a bow on this. First of all, thank you again, everybody, for just the incredible participation in the chat and just the insights that you generated there and the great questions. Thank you to all of our speakers for the remarkable job that you all did and the wisdom that you provided there. I feel like if I were to try to pull out one serious theme, it would be around finding pathways to really care. And that kind of summarizes like what we do with the VOC function and what our great CEOs are doing in terms of awakening purpose inside of people and creating great community. And obviously what Sandra and Michael are doing in terms of fostering these wonderful peer-to-peer relationships. how can we activate real caring inside of the people that work for these organizations, and then ultimately extending that out towards our customers in ways that actually create loyalty. So,
Mhm.
just a few other thoughts here, but I love the interaction of CX and UX. Just Amber and her method of gaining real influence as a CX leader. I'm going to use that case study in some of the speaking that I do. I mean, she just blew me away with how she's combining a very authentic sense of care with
Mhm.
real intelligence and capability and a proven execution record, just to be an unstoppable force inside of
Mhm.
her organization. We all have the ability to do that, whether we have an executive title or not. And I just think about how much proven character gets you in terms of earning influence. When people can trust you to do the right
Mhm.
thing for the right reasons, it's amazing what that does in terms of your ability to create great experiences for those around you. Kristen, incredible job with CX Arrows Tour. The thing that kind of I pulled out of that, I was thinking about how really, regardless of how we all got here, we're all customer experience professionals, and I do feel like there's been some especially 4 or 5 years ago, there was a bit of a box that we all put ourselves in when we started using that phrase around customer experience, and we tried to functionalize it and have the right way of doing CX, and it doesn't exist, and CX is the type of thing, I mean, the experience is the customers, it's not ours. It's not something
Mhm.
that we could take away from them and do on their behalf, like, it's something that the whole organization is creating together. So I think the more that we kind of allow that legacy idea of, "I am a CX professional, and I'm going to do the work of CX on behalf of the organization," the more that we allow that to dissolve away into this better, more evolved thinking of, "I'm gonna invite people into this, we're going to do this thing together," whatever we call it. It's really just delivering on our promises, to use that Jason statement, in a customer centric way. And
Mhm.
that excites me to see how different people with different backgrounds are coming to these same conclusions. Next Gen WFM with Natalie. I love her concept of earning the calm. And that just made me so happy to hear her talk about how bringing all these different pieces together with the talent and the technology and activating people and allowing them to be the very best that they could possibly be and creating pathways to that, that's how we earn the calm, and the customers can feel that. I mean, just the capability and the adaptability that comes with that. Like, we're not caught up in survival mode. Like, yeah, we're gonna spend time with you. We're gonna react to this thing that's going on out in the
Mhm.
world together, because that's what we do. Like, we
Mhm.
overcome these things together. But it takes a really mature organization to be in that type of mentality. As we looked at, scaling automation with Charlie, and that idea of building trust, I just love the idea of balance. It's a balancing act, folks. Like, you can't we can't just throw away the AI conversation. Like, there's real opportunity and real efficiency to be gained there. And that idea of ease of business, as we talked about, is one of the leading metrics right now when it comes to delivering the ROI of CX. Is it easy to do business with us? These technologies help us to make that possible, but then it's balancing that idea of real trust, real connection, real community, real proactive guidance, where I'm
Mhm.
going deep to understand what the customer truly needs, and then I'm using technology as part of the way that I guide them there. But, that human connection is gonna be the thing ultimately that makes that happen. And finally, as we get into Sandra and Michael, I love how the emphasis is there on understanding peers. We think so much, and in many of these summits, sometimes we get too addicted to the leadership layer and like our relationship as a leader to our people. And we don't talk near enough, in my opinion, about how we can help peers to be better peers for one another. And
Mhm.
how that's really the job of the leader, is creating this fertile ground in which these wonderful relationships get to grow. And if we look at data from Tiny Pulse and from others, people say all the time, people don't leave a job, they leave their boss. And yeah,
Mhm.
that's a part of it. But honestly, people leave their peers first before they leave the boss. And oftentimes it's the boss that failed to create good peer-to-peer relationships or a dynamic where that was possible. But you cannot overestimate how important those peer-to-peer relationships are in terms of doing the best work that these people can, being loyal to the organization, and delivering on the expectations for customers. So spend time with that. I mean, really think about how you as a leader can not just have great relationships directly with your people, but how you're extending that outward and enabling them to have great relationship with each other. And that's what human first CX looks like, to use that hashtag that Jen's been throwing out all week. But yeah, thank you to of course Liza and Erica and Jen and the entire Instant Teams team for bringing us all together for this. I think this was a really special day, and it's been wonderful to be a part of this.
We appreciate you and your time and your energy and your recap. Much more eloquent than my pizza, beavers, and nuggets.
I don't know.
That's why you're here. Thank you.
Of course.
We might have to do a whole voice of customer on those 3 things, Nate. So that will be session 3.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for all of your time, and just thank you to all the brands and speakers who participated today. We couldn't do what we do without you, and we look forward to furthering our connections and our networking on LinkedIn. You can find all the speakers on our webinar in their bios and connect with them in real time. Bye, everyone.
All right, bye, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Cheers.